Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Bible Talk with Bruce and Becky.
Don't send money.
That's right. Don't send money. We don't want your money. However, donations of precious metals and or deeds to property will be gladly accepted. Right, Becky?
Oh, hush.
Oh, I was just joking with you. Thank you for joining us on this second installment of Bible Talk. After our first episode, we got some nice feedback, and our daughter has already compared us favorably to Fun with Flags with Sheldon and Amy. If you don't catch that illusion, you don't watch Big Bang Theory.
Which probably makes them a lot holier than we are.
I'm sure of that. Well, we're in the book of Genesis. We're going to look at chapters 1 and 2, at least most of that today. If you have your Bible, get it handy, and or your electronic device that you may use to read scriptures, or you can just listen as we go through. Before we get into that, I'd like to talk just briefly about something that happened in our small group from church. We have a group that we meet with every other Saturday morning for brunch, fellowship, and Bible study. And communion, and the occasional song from Bruce and Becky. But a couple of weeks ago, we were challenged to sum up what the Bible is all about in one brief sentence. And I remember what Becky said. It was a good response. Becky, what is the Bible all about?
It's about the nature of man, the nature of God, and the relationship between the two of them.
That's good. I said simply, the Bible is about God. Although there are many human beings involved and stories about people, God is the main character in every book, except perhaps for Esther and the book of Ruth, although he's mentioned there, and Ecclesiastes. But we won't get into that at this time. God is definitely the focus of the opening of Genesis. So let's begin in chapter 1 of Genesis and see what we can learn about God from the beginning. Got to get my reading glasses. I'm not used to them quite yet. I've had cataract surgery recently. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We're going to go through and alternately read about the things that He created on each day. But it tells us in verse 2, the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Notice as we begin this account of creation, the earth already is in existence, which gives us a clue to what the 6 days of creation will be all about. They're not primarily about the creation of matter or even the earth itself as a planet, but they're more about God forming things on the earth and giving order and purpose to His creation. And we're going to focus on that as we go through and see what is the focus of each thing that He creates on each day of creation, and also some questions that come up in this account. But I think it's important to understand from a biblical point of view that we have purpose. The earth has purpose. We're not just the end result of a random small changes over long periods of time, but God created us with a purpose. And that makes a whole difference in our world view, if you want to put it that way.
Well, it could have been small changes over a length of time and still have purpose.
It could have been. And we'll talk about that as we look at the days of creation. This woman is so smart. and always brings up good questions in our studies together.
I have to keep him in his place.
And she's done a good job of it in 50 years that we've been together. The earth had no form, and it was dark. The Spirit of God is doing something over the face of the water. Apparently, the earth is all covered with water at this point. My translation says, and this is the English Standard Version, the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the water. What does it say in the one you're reading from, Becky?
The Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters.
Hey, we've got the same thing.
This is the New King James.
Some translations say brooding. The original language suggests a mother bird hovering over her brood and maybe protecting or seeing what's going on with them. Well, let's look at the first of the 6 days of creation. Becky, would you read verses 3 through 5?
Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day.
All right, light is created. Where did that light come from, Becky?
God created it.
Was it the sun and the moon providing light?
Not at this point, no.
No, there'll be the sun and the moon are created on the 4th day, if I'm not mistaken. How could there be light without the sun and the moon? What would be the source of it? You have any ideas on that?
I already said.
You said God created it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you meant by the source. So it came from God himself.
Yeah. He is light.
Yes, God is light according to other scriptures. And it's interesting to me that this light comes directly from God in the beginning. And in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, in chapter 22, verse 5, it says that there'll be no need for light in the new heavens and the new earth that God creates after this earth is gone. Because God himself is the light. So light, God says, is good. Everything he makes, he will pronounce good in the original creation. And God said, verse 6, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse and separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse. And it was so. And God called the expanse heaven, or sky. There was evening and there was morning the 2nd day. Some translations say that he created a firmament, and ancient people perhaps believed that there was a dome over the earth, a solid dome, which firmament suggests. But it's the sky, we would call it, or maybe the atmosphere. Yeah, very good. And there's water above the sky and water below the sky. Some people have suggested there was a vapor canopy over the earth in the early years of its existence. Notice that the days are figured from evening. Evening and morning creates a day. And that would be in keeping with the Jewish calendar. This is a Hebrew book where day begins at sunset and goes to the following sunset. Evening and morning, day 2. All right, Becky, please read day 3, beginning verse 9.
Then God said, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good.
Okay, originally the earth is covered with water, and now dry land appears. Anything you want to say about that, Becky?
Well, we don't know if at that point there was one big continent or just, it seems as if there's earth and there's water.
My personal belief, personal belief is that there was only one landmass at this time before the flood, but I couldn't prove that from Scripture. It's my own opinion based on study. I should mention, however, as Becky knows quite well, my opinions are usually correct. You're laughing. One of my church members years ago bought a T-shirt at a flea market and gave it to me to wear, and it summed up my opinions quite well. It said you can agree with me or you can be wrong. But I'm not entirely serious about that. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, coming to the fourth day here. I'll begin reading in verse 11. God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind on the earth. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kind, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the third day. So we have vegetation on the earth, both bushes, plants of the field, fruit trees, and
Grass and herbs.
grass and herbs. Herbs, they say, some people in England. I was taught to say herbs. Okay, that's right. Notice still without the light of the sun, these plants are able to grow because of the light that comes from God. This raises a question in my mind that I cannot answer for certain. Is the light from God similar to the light from the sun?
Well, nobody has defined light. Even today, we don't know what it is.
That's what I understand from my rudimentary knowledge of science, that there was a big debate when I was in high school studying science. They couldn't decide if light was waves or particles.
Now they say it's both.
Both?
Both.
Whoa. I guess you have to be Einstein to figure that out. I don't know. Let's go on to day 4, Becky, verse 14.
Then God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. And then God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also. God set them in the firmament in the heavens to give light on the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good.
You gotta read verse 19 too. Gotta count those days.
So the evening and the morning were the fourth day.
Thank you. Notice, by the way, well, several things you might notice in that reading. Did you notice, for example, it doesn't name the sun and the moon? It just says the greater light to rule over the day and the lesser light to rule over the night. People have speculated as to why the sun and moon are not named. Do you have any idea on that, young lady?
No.
Well, let me give you one that scholars have come up with. The sun and moon were both worshipped by the cultures around Israel at the time this book was written. And some in Israel even worship the sun and the moon. It's possible that Moses, or whoever wrote this, I'm going to say Moses as we go through the book, didn't name them on purpose so people would know that they're not to be worshipped. They were just created by God. What purposes are given for these lights in the heavens?
They rule the day and they rule the night.
They rule the day
and they're for times and seasons.
The main purpose is to provide for times and seasons. And people in those days, including Israel, were interested in the times and seasons because of their religious festivals that they had. And the moon especially would determine when the festivals began and ended. People in ancient times studied the heavens a lot more than we do, and they were able, for example, to predict eclipses and other things that happen in the sky. And some of them even believe that the sun, moon, and stars controlled what happened on the earth. One reason we don't know as much about those as they did is we can't see them as well as they did. We have too much light from our civilized world. But they separate the light from the darkness, they rule over the day, and they determine the seasons, especially the religious times of the year.
I have a question.
I bet.
We've gone nearly 16 minutes. Do you plan on doing 2 chapters today?
Nope.
Okay.
We're going to finish chapter 1. At least he's trying to keep me in line because of the frivolity with which I wasted the first few minutes. Let's go on to the 5th day, beginning of verse 20. And God said, "Let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens." So God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. God saw that it was good, and God blessed them, and saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the 5th day. Let me just mention, by the way, we'll not read every verse of every chapter as we go through Genesis, but I wanted us to do this particular chapter. Okay, so we have sea creatures and birds so far, each according to their kind. Becky, please read day 5. No, this is day 6. 2 things will be created on day 6. Becky, please read 24 through 25, and I will read 26 through 28.
Okay. Then God said, let the earth bring forth the living creatures according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beasts of the earth, and according to its kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And God saw that it was good.
Then God said, "Let us make man, or human beings, in our image after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Okay, we're going to stop our reading at that point for today. But a couple of things we need to mention before we finish, and raise some questions that we'll continue discussing next time. One thing I want to mention is that God made us in his image and in his likeness, and that's the only
Male and female.
male and female. That was the next thing I was going to mention. Both male and female are in God's image and likeness, and they apparently have equality when they're created. Both of them are given dominion over the earth and over the animals to care for and tend the earth. Next time we'll discuss why God says, "Let us make man in our image." To whom is he speaking? But I want to, before we conclude today, talk about the disputes that have gone on for a long time now about trying to reconcile what the Bible tells us about creation and what science tells us about the way the world came into being. The Bible says that these things were created in 6 days. It uses the Hebrew word today, yom. And some Bible believers that I would call fundamentalists, and not in an insulting way, say it means 6 24-hour days, and that the earth was created in 6 24-hour days. Of course, it could be hard to reconcile that with science, which says all these things came into being over a long period of time, millions or even billions of years. So in just a couple of minutes before we quit for today, Becky's going to explain and reconcile those two viewpoints. No?
No, I will say that science and religion should not be opposite ends of the story. They should be combined. And that a search for truth is a search for truth, and when you find it, it belongs to God. It's true.
I like the way you put that. Science, if scientists are being honest and people of integrity, is a search for truth. And truth is tested over and over, what they present as hypothesis, until it becomes accepted fact. I think just reading Genesis 1 the way it's written, and thinking about the people who first heard it read, and about Moses, I think they would have taken the word yom or day to mean the usual meaning, 24 hours. That's reinforced by the fact that it says evening and morning for each day. However, yom can have other meanings. For example, at the beginning of the next chapter, yom is used for the entire 6 days of creation. It's called a day. In the Psalms, one of the Psalms says that a day with the Lord is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. I don't know how closely we can reconcile that, but we should say in closing, and we'll begin with this point next week. The Bible was not written, Moses didn't write Genesis to answer questions that we have in the 20th and 21st century. It's not a book explaining how God did this or how long it took as far as the comparative length of time. But I would emphasize what Becky said. Truth is truth. And when we're able to reconcile things in the Bible with the things that science said, we'll find that there is no disagreement. However, I don't know if we're at that point yet, but we can accept what the Bible says is true without getting into a lot of scientific discussion, I think, for which I am not qualified. You want to say something else?
My basis for trying to put science and religion together is that God does not lie. He's not capable of lying. And if there is evidence in the universe that is provable, measurable evidence, and that can't be attributed to God if it's not true.
Okay. Good point. Now that we've reconciled that discussion, we're going to leave on that point and pick up later. If you have feedback or comments, we would appreciate you noting that when you watch this episode. Next time we will conclude what's said about the creation of human beings and look at chapter 2, which has a somewhat different account of the creation of man and woman, giving more detail. But I want to leave by emphasizing the point, when God created male and female, they were equally in the image of God and equally having dominion over the other parts of creation. That's going to change when we get to chapter 3. But for now...
It wasn't God's fault.
Nope. It was male and female's fault. Thanks again for watching, and God bless you. Bye-bye.